We end our week of celebrating the great Alan Kulwicki by talking to his friend Doug Mayr. Doug shares how he was able to use his karting experience to race open-wheeled cars better than Alan. He also offered some great advice for the future of my racing career. First question, when and how did you meet Alan?
Through go-kart racing at the Badger Kart Club racetrack. His dad used to take him, but his dad was also an engine builder for Norm Nelson, stock car driver. And there were times when his dad couldn't take him to the racetrack, so he asked us if we would bring him along, and we did that, and that's when we first started getting to know each other. We weren't great friends because we didn't live close enough, but we would pick him up on the way to the races.
Okay. Can you tell me something about Alan that maybe nobody else knows?
That I can actually tell you? Not 100%. I mean, he was pretty dedicated to the racing thing, no doubt about that. One of his sayings, as I was starting to tell you, was, when you've heard it probably before, you never get a second chance to make a good first impression, which was I was just starting to tell you about. You have to, if you're going to continue on in racing, there's so much about meeting people is so important. Whether you take up this Dale Carnegie course, always wear nice clothes, whatever it is, if you want to keep moving forward, you've got to have that impression of being a winner and being successful. Mm-hmm. So that's probably one of the most important things.
Yeah.
You like to laugh, you like to have fun away from racing. So we were buddies away from the racing. We hardly even talked about the races. I only went to 3 or 4 races a year: Michigan, Phoenix, Daytona, and Atlanta. Yeah, those 4. Yeah. But beyond that, he likes to chase the girls back then. He was single, he could do that, so. And like to have a good time, like good food, Yeah. So.
Okay. Other than racing, what did Alan enjoy doing?
Again, a lot of the things we also used to compete against who had the coolest clothes back in the day. He liked to have a little style about him. He liked to work out. There used to be these Bally's health clubs, and they're gone now. And we played a little bit of racquetball.
Okay.
He wasn't the most graceful at times, but he liked to do that. He was always very competitive.
Yeah.
So whatever we did, it was, we compete with each other.
Mm-hmm.
I took him out to the racing kart track a couple times, even after he was well established in NASCAR, and he would try to beat me, and whatever it took. So just always very competitive.
Mm-hmm. What do you miss most about Alan?
Just talking to him, just a friendship.
Mm-hmm.
That's because again we were separate. Him and I were friends apart from the racing. He would call me almost every week. Even after we won the championship, it would be rare that 2 weeks would go by when one of us wouldn't talk to each other, pick up the phone, and even if I would call him and he'd be in the shop, he'd come and pick up the phone. So that was good. It was fun.
Yeah. If Alan were here today, what do you think his role in the racing world would be?
That's a good question. A lot of people wonder if he would be a car owner. I think he might enjoy that because he liked kids. And the last lady he was dating, he probably would have married her, and they probably would have had some kids. So, helping kids up through the ranks in one way or another. Mm-hmm. I think that would have been his role. He would have enjoyed that.
Okay.
Teaching people.
Yeah. Can you tell me some stories or adventures you had with Alan?
Oh, well, that's a tough question. I wasn't really quite prepared for that, but I'd have to think about that. What other questions do you have?
What is your greatest memory of Alan?
Just again the simple things. I mean, even when he had moved back to North Carolina. Sometimes he'd come back home for the holidays, but both, I think, how did that go? His stepmom, technically, is what she was.
Yep.
She had some kids of her own, so sometimes on the holidays, Thelma and Jerry would have to go with her side, and he would come and spend the holidays with us, with my family. So, he'd come on over and have Thanksgiving dinner with us. A lot of people never knew that. We never talked about it. He just did that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So, and like I said, we used to work out together and play racquetball and go to the nightclubs back then. They used to be everywhere back then. You know, plays discos back in the day. So, and it was just fun. We just had fun doing things like that. Like I said, he liked to try different restaurants, and that was one of his things. He'd always buy dinner. That was his contribution for his friends. You know.
Tell me about Alan's girlfriend, Marilyn, and the girl he last dated.
Marilyn, he met, I think, when she was a trophy girl up at Slinger. And they started dating for a while. And she wound up working for a radio station. There was another lady in between, and I'd have to dig in to remember her name. She worked here in town. She wound up marrying the guy that was the founder of Sprecher Brewing. Yeah. But that was the girl that he was the most serious about at that time. He actually asked her to marry him. Most people don't realize that, don't know that. Unfortunately, she said no. She said, I can't marry you, because he was already down in Charlotte, and I don't think that was her lifestyle. She didn't want to move and, pick up and go down to Charlotte. So that was a big disappointment for him, because they really liked Jody. Her name was Jody.
Oh, okay.
Jody. And then he eventually met Julie Horansky down in Charlotte. And then they got along real well. She was a bit younger, which he was a little concerned with, but I'm pretty sure she was a nice gal, pretty blonde. She was at the Hall of Fame banquet and so forth, and really nice lady. And I'm sure he would have asked her. One of the last things that we planned on doing after he won the championship, him and I were both going to he was to take her and I was going to take the lady, and we were going to go on vacation, because we rarely did that. When you're in racing, there usually isn't a lot of time for that kind of stuff. And I had a motorsports business, did a lot of racing myself, so we were planning on going someplace, maybe offshore in the Caribbean. Never quite happened. Yeah. So that's never got to that point. He was to take Julie, but she was a nice lady. I think she was working as a waitress someplace, is where he met her the first time.
Okay.
Yeah. And we got together and hit it off, and they stayed together for a long time.
Okay. Did Alan's dad support his racing, and how much was his involvement in it?
He supported it, not much financially beyond the karting. He did what he could, and he helped them somewhat with the setups and the engine tuning on the cars. But I don't think he didn't have the connections that he needed, to bring people in or bring sponsors in. He was kind of a hands-on guy, and he knew it was a tough road. So he did what he could, but to get to the professional level, there wasn't a lot he really could do. So he didn't even build the engines once he started moving up the ranks, because he didn't have that experience or the resources to do that sort of thing. Just wasn't there.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
He went through some races though. He was still supportive,
Yeah.
and he enjoyed his success and was very proud of him. But there was only certain things he could do, because he was a local engine builder.
Okay. Well, back to that question that you missed before. Can you tell me some stories or adventures that you had with Alan, or maybe any important ones to you?
I don't know. That's a good question. Like I said, we were always doing something. Whether it was I'd go down to Phoenix with him, we'd go out to, there were a whole bunch of airline flight attendants that he got to know, because he used to fly. People didn't have their own planes back then, So we all went out to must have been not a Hooters back then, but there was some other, like a chain restaurant. And it was a good time. There were a couple of his team member guys were there, and someplace I have a picture of that. There's a whole bunch of flight attendants that are all wrapped around him. So that was a good time, stuff like that. Like I said, going to the racetrack, and as far as karting, when you went to the racetrack where he was racing cars, any of the drivers, especially guys like Alan, where that was their living, that's their job. You know, you can't really sit there and BS. You can't socialize. And that's why even a lot of times people, they want autographs and things. There isn't always time for that. And people have to understand that.
Yeah.
Away from the track, you can do what you want.
Yeah.
When you're at the racetrack, it's pretty serious.
Yeah.
You know, it's your business, it's your life on the line. You know, you have to perform.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. When you guys went karting, was it mostly in Wisconsin or down south?
Well, with Alan at that point, he was still pretty young, so it was mostly at the Badger Kart Club track out in Dowsman.
Okay.
Yeah. My family traveled quite a bit. We went all over the country, which was a lot of fun. But I've raced in Canada, raced in England, Jamaica, Dominican Republic, just a lot of different places. Because karting is the foundation. I don't know if you've done it.
I haven't. I wanted to.
If you haven't, you still should. Because that's the foundation. I mean, you need to learn it, and you need to get good at it.
Mm-hmm.
It'll prepare you physically, mentally, provide some skills. I mean, you never know that maybe your road isn't just going to be in stock cars. You might wind up with people that want you to drive an open wheel car or a sports car, like a Daytona prototype or something.
Yeah.
Those are some pretty big venues themselves, and they're very successful television time and take good drivers. So it's going to be important to have that in your skill set.
Yeah.
And you can learn that through karting because it absolutely applies to all those things. When they did the Milwaukee Mile, when they first opened it with the Drufry brothers, they had an Indy car out there.
Okay.
And all I had ever driven prior to that were karts. And I jumped in the Grant King Indy car, and to me, it was natural. It was like a big go-kart. It was just fun. And I made actually 3 different sessions. Grant King owned this car. Last time that car had been run was at Indy for the Indianapolis 500. Where at Indy, it's a much bigger racetrack. The gearing is totally different. The wings are much smaller, real flat. Aerodynamics are all trimmed out. So he told me to shift it into 4th gear. It was only 4 speeds back then, because the car had been a few years old. And I wound up spinning out going into turn 1. Didn't hit anything, just spun out. Well, then Kulwicki gets in the car. Of course, he's got to go faster than me. That was just what he had to do. He comes around 1 lap, comes around the next lap, right in the middle of the straightaway, he nails the throttle, lights up the tires, and he spins out in the middle of the straightaway. So that was a good experience right there.
Yeah.
He had no idea. I mean, their cars are light and powerful and fast, but that's a whole another aspect of racing that's out there that today most of the good drivers are that versatile that they can do that stuff.
Yeah, and that's why I wanted to try karting one time, because I have no road course background.
Right.
Was he good at karting?
Reasonably good, yeah. I want to say he wasn't dominant, but he was certainly competitive and capable of winning.
Yeah.
His thing is he kind of knew when to move up. He didn't want to stay in one spot too long.
How old was Alan when you met him?
I don't even know. Probably early teens.
Early teens?
Yeah. And again, we'd go to the track and we'd do our thing and he'd do his thing. But after high school, we wound up working for a place called Pagel Hydraulics. That's just because we tried to run our karting business, but it wasn't enough to sustain us full time. Me and my oldest brother, he had another job. But we worked at the same company together. And then we started going again to the nightclubs back then. Used to be nightclubs right up and down Highway 100 here. So, Tropicana was one of our favorites. That was, like I said, we were buddies, heads above anything else.
Right.
Even after he moved down to North Carolina, I had a key to his house down there. He had a key to mine, because a lot of times we go to racing karts. I might be racing in Charlotte, where he lived, but he'd be off racing in Atlanta or who knows where, Pocono or someplace. So never even see each other. But sometimes we'd stay at his house, or he'd come up here to Milwaukee for an appearance or something, and he just help himself.
Do you remember the day when Alan got killed on the airplane and where you were at?
Yeah, I was at home, unfortunately. I was actually sleeping on the sofa. I'd fallen asleep watching TV, and I just woke up. It was like 11 o'clock at night, which was probably midnight down there. So it was a bad day. Yeah.
Was that late?
Pardon?
It was that late at night?
Yeah, he had done an appearance, I think, for Hooters someplace, so he had to wait till after the appearance, and they were flying into the local airport by the racetrack. And yeah, I don't know if I heard it, but I just woke up and that was tough. That was tough.
Yeah. So you weren't sure if you got a phone call or heard it?
The phone never stopped ringing after that. I mean, also I took the phone off the hook. People would call me all night long. Yeah. I just took it off the hook. That was a bad deal. And at first you hope, because the report said he might be okay or might be whatever. They didn't know at first. You don't really know.
So the plane went down.
Apparently the pilot didn't de-ice the wings. It was the underlying factor. And as you're coming in, you're going slower and slower, and it just stalled. It just fell. So, because once the ice is built up on the wings, they don't have the same aerodynamic effect. They don't have the lift.
Sure.
So when you can't fly the airplane as slow before it stalls, before it stops flying.
Sure.
He just forgot, just didn't put the de-icers on, and then he came in like he normally did, and it falls out of the sky.
Was that Alan's plane or was it somebody else's plane?
Hooters plane.
Hooters plane.
Yeah, I knew all those people on the airplane. The pilot I knew, Mark Brooks was the owner's son, and I forgot the president. Pardon?
Charlie Campbell,
Charlie Campbell was the president of Hooters. Yeah,
Mark Brooks, and Dan Duncan.
and Dan Duncan.
So there was what, 5, 6 people on the plane? Oh, 4.
4.
Oh, yeah, Dan Duncan was on there, right?
Yeah, there's the initials up there.
Yeah.
Uh,
Mark Brooks, Charlie Campbell, Dan Duncan. I had met him. I didn't know him real well. Every time I would go to the races, I'd meet him a couple times a year.
TR was supposed to be on it. He chose not to be on there.
Really?
And then
Was it that big? I didn't know if it was a 6-passenger plane or what.
I don't know if it was a 4 or 6.
If they had 4 on there, wasn't any more room than that.
All right.
Yeah.
There was room for one more person, I guess, and
Huh.
the president of Winston at that time also might have hooked a ride, and then he changed his mind. Wayne,
Oh, I remember that name, Wayne somebody. And Alan had been talking about buying his own plane, he just never got to it. That would have been.
Did you race more when Alan was gone than
Oh yeah. I only raced against him a couple of times at the Milwaukee Mile.
Okay.
I rented a car, one from Dave Jensen out of Missouri. That was a bad car. Big old steering wheel, real slow. The guy was 240 pounds, and he never changed anything when I got in. So, trying to fit in a seat was terrible. And then I raced one of Butch Miller's cars a couple times, and that was much, much better. Much better. Much more competitive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, and that was fun. That was a lot more fun. Yeah.
Did those,
when was your last year?
Of any kind of car racing? 98.
98.
I've tested, actually went down to, I want to say, Kenley, South Carolina.
Okay.
Tested a Xfinity car a couple years ago. We had some sponsorship available, but it happened so late, I would have got one test day and go race. That wouldn't have worked,
Yeah.
You just can't do that.
Yeah.
Not after that much time off.
Yeah.
You have to, because even then I could have tested a little bit more, but, so I wound up putting the sponsorship on somebody else's car from Mid-Ohio is what I did. Yeah. A candy company that we had connected with.
Oh. All right.
But anyhow.
so I have a quick question about the accident. Did when you stopped racing, was that after that second one or?
Pretty much so,
No.
because I've now had 17 broken bones. And,
Yeah.
a couple. If I would, I wouldn't mind doing it a couple times, but you got to do it right. We never did it right. In the Trans Am Series, we were way underfinanced, and so we were in the Trans Am Series. You got to have the proper budget, which gets you the right people more than the equipment. Equipment's important, but you got to have the right people behind you. That's the key. Like
I saw it took him
Talented
forever to
crew
get you
chief.
out of that car, and I'm like,
Yeah, I was in there the whole
get out
time.
of the car, get out of the car.
I was knocked out because I had
really?
the second time I had a broken neck. So I broke my C2, C3, so I got plate in there with 4 screws.
Oh.
And I broke the brakes failed. There were no brakes.
Yeah. Yep.
And
It
I
was a
pushed
hard
it,
hit.
went down the front straightaway. It was about 165 miles an hour. It was a 90-degree right-hand corner. And I pushed the pedal, went to the floor, pushed on again, and at first I said, oh shit. And I said, oh God, just in case that was the last thing I'd say. Because I thought this is it, for a moment
Yeah.
there, I thought, I'm done.
Yeah.
Because the car wouldn't steer when you're going 130 some miles an hour, So it almost went straight in, as you saw.
Yeah.
Wow.
And they were already contemplating putting in a rule that required a fuel shut off, that would automatically shut the fuel off, because most of the cars all had electric fuel pumps in all the Trans Am series cars. And they didn't have that rule in place when I was doing it. So it kept on pumping gas onto the engine bay. That's why I couldn't put the fire on. And a corner worker had run across the track with his fire suit on. And somebody goes, oh, the driver's out of the car. So they didn't think I was even in the car. So they were in no hurry to put it out. So it kept pouring gas on the engine. It hit the power steering fluid reservoir, that dumped all the fluid. The rear end broke in half, that dumped all the fluid. And I think the transmission broke as well. So all the burnable fluids were burning all the way around the car, but they never got in the car. But they kept blowing that white fire extinguisher powder. I was gagging on it, I was choking. I thought that was the part that was going to do me in.
Right.
It was also getting really hot. And I finally got my left arm up to the radio button. Because nothing would move at first. I just couldn't move. I was slumped over. I couldn't move when I woke up. I was knocked out for a while. And I woke up, and then I got my left arm and started screaming.
Oh, okay.
And the guy that heard this on the radio was one of the corner workers. He was an ex-Canadian Olympic basketball player. Big guy, real big, 6'9" or something. So he ran over and he pulled me out. So, yeah. It was hot. It was really hot.
So did you get any burns from it?
I did not get burned, but I was coughing up that powder for 3 months.
Oh.
That was nasty. That was really bad.
Yeah, we were wondering how you were breathing in there with all that stuff.
And I don't, it probably has some lingering effects to this day because I still get like mucus, like I have allergies, but nothing has fixed it. I've been to several specialists and things, but that junk was in there pretty heavy.
Well, they just kept spraying and spraying and spraying, and it was
nasty.
oh.
But they didn't realize I was in there.
Yeah.
They couldn't see me. So.
Yeah, because even the announcers were saying, I don't know if he's out of the car or if he's in the car yet.
Right.
Yeah. So you came to the SRX race here in Slinger, right?
Yeah, oh yeah.
And did you talk to Michael Waltrip?
I talked to, Andy Peach, no, he wasn't up there. Who was up? Bobby O'Bonney, I talked to him. He bought a cart from us when I had the business. Yeah. Just again, to play with, even though they bought good stuff, we let, I talked to Michael a little bit. There was a gal that I met up at Slinger one time who I dated her for a while, and Michael Waltrip also dated her at a different time. So there's always some connection.
Did that happen with you and Alan?
Once or twice, not intentionally. Not just like the same kind of people, I guess. Had the same taste. Yeah, not intentionally at all.